My name is Darrel Steele, and I'm from Lawton, Oklahoma, born and raised there. And around the age of I'd say about 22, decided that I was going to move out here after playing college football and not quite making it to the pros like I had anticipated. It didn't happen. And, I was a young man, age of 22, was able to move out on my own and decided to come to Atlanta and to get in the broadcast field. And I experienced a lot in growing up here and being involved in the nightlife and working in radio and television and working at different radio stations, some of the top radio stations here in Atlanta. Really, as a young man, having a real exciting life, and just kind of found that at 22 years old, really found myself making decisions that were very high-risk decisions, if you would, in regards to things that growing up, I would never, drugs and alcohol was never even an option. Athletic, working out, sports, didn't believe in it, and came out here and I changed my friends. I kind of got away from my roots of, the spiritual component that I was raised in. And that's when I really started to see my life kind of go through this whirlwind of change. And it was this downward kind of spiral that was, took me away from who I think my family put a lot into me. And it didn't happen immediately. It was a slow process. It was hanging out. It was compromising my morals and values. And before you know it, I found myself with a whole different population of people. And these people were using drugs and alcohol. And it's so interesting. I can remember the first time, the very first day that I snorted cocaine. I can remember the place, the apartment in the park, back the cold, the day, the time it was. And that decision was my first worst decision. And my whole life began to change at that point. Yeah. And because I liked it. And when I started liking it, it began to, and I didn't understand then like I do now, that it didn't take much for that to creep into your life and everything else is on hold. It ended up causing me to make bad decisions. And it was that where I first got my first encounter with law enforcement over checks that as a manager I was supposed to be putting up, and I began to have those checks made out to me. It was just bad decisions after one. And it gave me a smack on the hand. And that wasn't really enough for me, because the addiction was still there, and I didn't know. I just knew that I needed to feed it because it was telling me that I needed it. And it just continuously, progressively got worse, where the drugs and the people come, and then it goes from cocaine and it's pills, and then it's crack, and it's whatever you can get in your system when you're out there like that for that craving, just to meet that. Not knowing that there was a deeper issue that was going on in the inside of me. I ended up one night being out with a kid, and he was going into this place to rob it. And I'm sitting in the truck, and he comes out and jumps in the truck. We drive off, and we both get arrested. And they tell me that I'm being arrested for an armed robbery, and I'm like, oh my God. And that was a pivotal moment in my life that scared me crazy, And, I was able to get through that whole piece and not get that charge, but, I was so angry, still not understanding that, and I felt good because I had overcome it, but the people were still there. I didn't change the whole process of my life. There was areas that I just wanted to change. Like I wanted to change not using anymore, but I didn't change the people that were around me. And my thinking was still, and behavior hadn't changed. I was clean and sober, but I had the same behavior. So the behavior then told me, you know what, Darrel, you're the man. You can be selling dope to these folks now because they want it and they're weak. So I found myself, I began to sell dope and, wasn't gonna use no more. And I just began to sell. I was still functioning. I was running a law firm and doing some things for a law firm, and I was still able to use all the ability that I had accumulated. And it was at that point I started introducing my wife, and then I started with a family, and before I know it, I'm sitting in these big houses and all these cars and life. I'm like, oh my God, how life can just shift. And really deep down inside, I felt good, because I'm like, man, I'm ready to balance this. Until one day the police shows up at your door and says, hey man, and I got 18 grams of cocaine and all these and everything goes away. Everything goes away. That's been almost 10 years ago now, that when I lost it all, and 2 little boys, an 8 and a 9-year-old, and a wife that had to be without me for 18 months while I was incarcerated. The most difficult part is being disconnected from your family. The hardest times are the holidays and birthdays, being disconnected from family, and not having or being able to contact them when you want to. But I learned that before I could get out physically, I had to get out mentally. And it was at that moment that I made that decision, man, sitting down in the Georgia State Prison, that I'm done and I'm through with that. And when God gave me an opportunity to make a decision to do something, I said, you don't ever have to worry about me ever going back to that foolishness. My first day of release, my wife came and picked me up, and it was trying to reestablish. But I did understand one thing, that I wasn't going to come out trying to be this big, father. I just wanted to be a friend and begin to try to establish relationship. I didn't want to come out trying to take over everything, to allow the relationship to just develop itself, because my children were young, so they didn't even remember that, but I have an 8 and a 9-year-old now. But even with myself, I found that I was placing too many expectations. Don't try to catch up. Find out where your season is and get there and flourish and do the best you can and know what needs to be done where you are. And that's what I did. I knew that the first thing I had to do was try to establish employment. I needed to take care of my legal responsibility. I needed to get that behind me. And I needed to make sure that I could then begin to bring in something that could help pulling my family back together. And people just started to embrace me as a person that, we didn't care about your past, we care about your presence. I was the one concerned about my past. People were concerned about my presence. They were concerned about what I was bringing and my commitment and my dedication. And I think when I got psychologically straight from always wondering about the back instead of the front, I've become more productive. I knew where I needed to be. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the promises that I had made to God, that if I was to come out of this situation, that I would give back to help those that were incarcerated. And I began to write this business plan. I began to write this nonprofit. I began to create a component that was built around a reentry service, and I was doing a lot of research. And it ends up bringing you to a place that, to connect with the right people. My people changed, and I started attending and going to meetings and getting me back together. Then to go from there to be where you all are here with us today at an organization here, which the Department of Labor has funded us through Metro to provide services for at-risk youth in the Clayton County area. Man, many days go by and I pinch myself, and one thing that I do is I stay humble, because this has not been easy. And I know what happens when I put me in it. It gets difficult. So I've been very humble, extremely blessed. I've had challenges along the way, and I do still every day. There's ups, there's downs, but I stay in the process, and I stay humble, and I treat people the way that I want to be treated, and it just seems to work out. I think the biggest issue that America and that this country suffers from right now is that they don't think people recover. And one thing that I've learned, that people do recover, and they come back and become an asset and not a liability. And I think the more that we as a community and as a community at large look at people and see them where they could be, instead of always looking at where they are right now and condemning them, we can do better to help them. And I think that's what God does for us. Because if he would have looked at me where I was, then I wouldn't be here. But he saw me where I couldn't see myself. And I thank him for that. And I think I need to have that same character and disposition. I need to see you in a different place and see what you need and find out and ask you what you need to get to where you really want to be. And I think when we start doing that, this world will change, where we stop seeing people where they are, but where they could be.